When I watched my son-in-law Nathan slide the antique key into the guest room door and turn it with a soft click, I realized just how badly I had misjudged my own family. "You'll stay here until you calm down, Maggie," he said through the heavy oak door, his voice eerily calm. "We can't have you upsetting Emma with all these accusations." I pressed my palm against the cool wood, feeling the vibration as he walked away down the hallway of the mansion that, unbeknownst to him, I still legally owned. The deed to Elmwood Estate was safely tucked away in my lawyer's office downtown. It would be my last card to play, but not quite yet. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Margaret Wilson, Maggie to everyone who knows me. At 68, I'd spent 40 years as an elementary school principal before retirement. I prided myself on being a good judge of character, on seeing through the little lies children tell. It was a skill that served me well throughout my career. But somehow, I missed the deception happening under my own roof, within my own family. "Mom, we just don't have the space for you to stay with us this Thanksgiving," my daughter Olivia had told me over the phone last month. "Nathan's parents are coming, and they need the guest room. You understand, right?" I'd understood perfectly. The explanation made sense, logical, reasonable, except for one glaring detail. Elmwood Estate had 5 bedrooms. The magnificent Victorian mansion that my late husband James had purchased as an investment property nearly 30 years ago had more than enough space for everyone. I'd signed the property over to Olivia and Nathan to live in after James passed, or at least that's what they believed. In truth, I'd only granted them the right to live there while maintaining ownership. A small piece of legal insurance that James had insisted upon, saying, "Maggie, you never know what the future holds." How right he'd been. I first noticed the change in Olivia 3 years ago. My bright, compassionate daughter who used to call me daily had suddenly become distant, her visits less frequent. Each time I saw her, she seemed draped in designer clothes that I knew they couldn't afford on Nathan's mid-level finance salary. When I gently asked about their finances, she brushed me off with rehearsed answers that sounded more like Nathan than her. "Mom, Nathan's investments are doing exceptionally well. We're more than comfortable." I nodded and smiled, not mentioning the monthly transfers I'd been making to their account. $3,000 every month since Emma was born, meant for my granddaughter's education fund. I never asked if that's where the money was going. I trusted my daughter. That trust began to erode the day I stopped by unannounced with a homemade casserole and found Nathan driving a brand new luxury SUV. "Just got it yesterday," he'd said with a proud smile, running his hand along the gleaming hood. End-of-year bonus was generous. I smiled tightly, remembering the phone call just 2 weeks earlier when Olivia had asked if I could increase my monthly contribution because Emma's private school had raised its tuition. I'd agreed without hesitation, bumping the amount to $4,000. "The car looks wonderful," I'd said, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. Olivia must be thrilled. A flicker of something, discomfort, guilt, crossed Nathan's face. "Actually, it's a surprise for her birthday next week. Don't mention it when you see her." Olivia's birthday was 4 months away. I said nothing. That evening, I called my friend Susan, who had been my assistant principal for 15 years before retiring herself. "It doesn't add up, Susan," I confided. As we sat in her sunroom, cups of herbal tea warming our hands against the autumn chill. "Nathan's firm has been downsizing. 3 of their neighbors were laid off last month. Olivia mentioned it herself." "Where is this money coming from?" Susan stirred her tea thoughtfully. "Have you considered that they might be using Emma's education fund for other things?" The suggestion sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the weather. "Olivia wouldn't do that," I said automatically, but even as the words left my mouth, I felt the first genuine stirrings of doubt. People change, Maggie, Susan said gently. Sometimes not for the better. Over the next few months, I began paying closer attention. I noticed Olivia's new jewelry, the expensive artwork appearing in their home, the casual mentions of country, club memberships, and weekend trips. None of it aligned with what I knew about Nathan's position at the struggling financial firm where he worked. Then came the renovations to Elmwood Estate. When I'd allowed them to move in 7 years ago, the agreement had been clear. Any structural changes needed my approval, as I still legally owned the property. But one Saturday, I arrived to find construction crews tearing out the original mahogany paneling in the library, the room where James had proposed to me, where he'd read stories to Olivia as a child. "What's happening here?" I asked, unable to keep the shock from my voice as I watched workers discarding pieces of my history into a dumpster. Nathan appeared, wearing a hard hat like he was overseeing a major development project, rather than the destruction of my memories. "Maggie, didn't expect you today. We're modernizing. The old wood was making the room too dark. We're going for a more contemporary aesthetic." "You were supposed to consult me about structural changes," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That was our agreement." Nathan's smile never wavered, but his eyes hardened slightly. "That was years ago, Maggie. We can't check with you every time we want to update our home. Besides, Olivia loves the new design concept." "Where is Olivia?" I asked, looking around for my daughter. "Spa day with Judith," he replied, referring to his mother. "Mother-daughter bonding, you understand." I did understand, more than he realized. I understood that I was being systematically excluded from my daughter's life, that the home I legally owned was being altered without my consent, and that the money I provided for my granddaughter was likely funding their increasingly lavish lifestyle. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I called Richard Tanner, the family lawyer who had handled James's estate. "I need to see the deed to Elmwood Estate," I told him, "and I need to know what my legal rights are regarding the property." Richard's response was measured, professional. "I can have those documents ready for you tomorrow morning, Maggie. But may I ask what's prompted this inquiry?" "Just being thorough," I replied, unwilling to voice my suspicions until I had more concrete evidence. James always said I should stay informed about our assets. The next day, Richard confirmed what I already knew. Elmwood Estate remained solely in my name. The arrangement granted Olivia and Nathan the right to live there indefinitely, but ownership had never been transferred. "You have significant leverage here, Maggie," Richard said, folding his hands on his desk. "Is there something specific you're concerned about?" I hesitated, then decided to confide in him. "I think my daughter and son-in-law may be misusing funds I've been providing for my granddaughter, and they're making unauthorized changes to the property." Richard nodded slowly. "I see. And what would you like to do about it?" What did I want to do? The question lingered with me as I drove home, the manila folder containing the deed sitting on the passenger seat like a loaded gun. I didn't want a confrontation. I didn't want to sever my relationship with Olivia or lose access to Emma. I just wanted honesty. I decided to start with a simple question. That evening, I called Olivia. "I was wondering if we could look at Emma's education fund statements together," I said casually. "I'd like to understand how the investments are performing." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Why?" Olivia finally asked, her voice suddenly guarded. "Just curious about the growth," I replied. "I've been contributing for 7 years now. It must be quite substantial." Another pause, longer this time. "Now isn't a good time to get into all that, Mom. We're really busy with the renovations and everything." "The renovations you didn't consult me about?" I couldn't help asking. "Oh my God, Mom," Olivia sighed, exasperation evident in her voice. "Are you still upset about the library? It's just old wood. We're making the house better." "It's not just old wood to me, Olivia. Your father proposed to me in that room." Well, maybe if you'd actually given us the house instead of just letting us live in it, we wouldn't need to check with you about every little change, she snapped. Her words hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't my daughter speaking. This was Nathan's influence. The Olivia I raised would never have been so callous about something that held such sentimental value to me. I'd still like to see the education fund statements, I persisted, my voice growing quieter. Fine, she relented. I'll have Nathan put something together. He handles all that anyway. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Put something together. Not show me the actual statements, but fabricate something. The implication was clear, and it broke my heart. 2 days later, Nathan emailed me a single-page summary showing Emma's education fund with a balance just over $100,000. The document had no letterhead, no account numbers, nothing to verify its authenticity. Based on my monthly contributions alone, the fund should have contained over $300,000, not counting any interest or investment growth. I printed the document and took it to Susan's house. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. This is obviously fake, she said bluntly after examining it. Maggie, I think you need to take more direct action. Like what? I asked. I don't want to lose Olivia. I don't want to be cut off from Emma. But you can't let them continue to take advantage of you, Susan insisted. They're using your love and generosity against you. She was right, of course. But confronting them directly seemed too risky. I needed to understand exactly what was happening before I made any moves. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. Martin Reeves was a retired police detective who now specialized in financial fraud cases. I gave him access to my bank records showing the transfers to Olivia and Nathan, and asked him to find out where the money was actually going. 2 weeks later, Martin presented his findings in Susan's living room, with Richard Tanner present at my request. Mrs. Wilson, I'm afraid the news isn't good, Martin began, opening a folder containing his report. Based on my investigation, virtually none of the money you've been sending has been placed in any education fund for your granddaughter. Despite suspecting as much, hearing it confirmed made my stomach twist painfully. Where has it gone? I asked. Luxury purchases primarily. The new car, designer clothing, expensive vacations. But that's not the worst of it, Martin continued. Mr. Parker has significant gambling debts. He's been frequenting high-stakes poker games at a private club in the city. Based on my sources, he's down over $200,000 in the past year alone. Richard Tanner shifted in his seat. Maggie, this changes things considerably. This isn't just about renovations anymore. They're exploiting your generosity while potentially putting the property itself at risk. What do you mean? I asked. If Nathan's gambling debts escalate and creditors come after their assets, they could attempt to claim equity in the house. While they wouldn't succeed because they don't actually own it, it could create significant legal complications for you. The room fell silent as I absorbed this information. My daughter's husband was gambling away money meant for my granddaughter's future. My daughter was either complicit or willfully ignorant, and the home that held so many precious memories was being systematically stripped of its character, its history. What should I do? I asked, looking between Susan, Richard, and Martin. You have several options, Richard began. We could send a formal cease and desist regarding the renovations. We could discontinue your financial contributions, or in the most extreme case, we could give them notice to vacate the property. The thought of evicting my own daughter and granddaughter from their home was unthinkable, but continuing as things seemed equally impossible. I need to speak with Olivia alone, I decided. Without Nathan present, I need to understand if she knows what's happening. Susan squeezed my hand. Do you want me to go with you? I shook my head. This is something I need to do myself. The next day, I called Olivia and asked if we could meet for lunch. Just the 2 of us. I'm really busy with the renovations, Mom, she hedged. It's important, Olivia, I insisted. Please. She finally agreed to meet me at the Morning Brew, a cafe halfway between our homes. When she arrived 20 minutes late, I barely recognized her. My once warm, approachable daughter now wore a cold sophistication that seemed to create an invisible barrier between us. Her hair was expertly highlighted, her nails perfectly manicured, her casual lunch outfit probably costing more than most people's monthly rent. "I can only stay for an hour," she announced, checking her designer. Watch as she sat down. "What's so important?" I took a deep breath. "I want to talk about Emma's education fund." Olivia's expression immediately closed off. "Nathan's handling it. It's all fine." "It's not fine, Olivia," I said quietly. "I've seen the numbers. The real numbers." She froze, coffee cup halfway to her lips. "What are you talking about?" "I know the money isn't going into any education fund. I know about Nathan's gambling. I know what's really happening." For a moment, I saw a flicker of the daughter I remembered, vulnerability, fear, even shame crossing her face. But then the mask slid back into place, her features hardening. "You had us investigated?" she asked incredulously. "How dare you?" "How dare I?" I repeated, keeping my voice low despite my rising emotions. "How dare you and Nathan take money, meant for Emma's future, and squander it? How dare you lie to me for years?" "You don't understand," she hissed, leaning forward. "Nathan has plans, investment strategies. Yes, we've had some setbacks, but we're building something important." "Building what, Olivia? A facade?" "I've seen the gambling debts. Over $200,000 in the past year alone." She paled slightly, but recovered quickly. "Those are temporary. His system is going to pay off. We're going to be able to give Emma so much. More than just college tuition?" It was worse than I'd feared. She wasn't ignorant of Nathan's behavior. She was rationalizing it, enabling it. "Olivia," I said gently, reaching for her hand across the table. "This isn't you. The daughter I raised wouldn't lie about something like this. She wouldn't allow someone to gamble away her child's future." She yanked her hand away. "The daughter you raised grew up, Mom. I'm not a child anymore. Nathan and I are partners. We make decisions together. If you can't respect that, maybe you shouldn't be sending us money at all." Her words stung, but they also confirmed what I needed to know. This wasn't just Nathan's doing. Olivia was actively participating in the deception. "You're right," I said quietly. "I shouldn't be sending you money under false pretenses. From now on, I'll establish a trust for Emma's education that neither you nor Nathan can access until she's ready for college." Olivia's eyes flashed with anger. "So you're cutting us off? Just like that?" "I'm ensuring my granddaughter's future is secure," I corrected. "And I'm also informing you that any further renovations to Elmwood Estate need my explicit written approval, as per our original agreement." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You can't be serious. That house is ours now. You gave it to us." "I allowed you to live there," I clarified. "I never transferred ownership. The deed remains in my name." The color drained from her face as the implications of this settled in. "Does Nathan know this?" "I assumed you both did. It was very clearly stated in the paperwork you signed 7 years ago." She stood abruptly, gathering her purse. "I need to go." "Olivia, please," I said, rising as well. "Let's talk about this. We can find a solution that works for everyone." "There's nothing to talk about," she snapped. "You've made your position very clear." As she stormed out of the cafe, I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. The confrontation had gone even worse than I'd feared. But at least now everything was in the open. No more pretending, no more enabling their behavior through silence. I didn't hear from Olivia for 3 days. When my phone finally rang and I saw her name on the screen, I felt a surge of hope that quickly dissipated when I heard her tone. "Mom, we need to talk. Can you come to the house tomorrow? Around 2? Of course, I agreed immediately. I'd like that. Nathan will be there too, she added, her voice strangely flat. We have some things we need to discuss as a family. I should have recognized the warning signs. I should have been more cautious. But I was so eager to repair things with my daughter that I walked straight into their trap. When I arrived at Elmwood Estate the next day, Nathan answered the door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Maggie, right on time. Come in, please. The house that had once been warm and inviting now felt cold, staged, like a showroom rather than a home. More of the original features had been removed or covered up. The beautiful heart pine floors were now hidden under trendy white carpeting. The hand-carved banister James had lovingly restored was gone, replaced by a sleek metal and glass construction. "Where's Olivia?" I asked, following Nathan into the formal living room, another space that had been stripped of its historic character. "She'll join us in a minute," he replied, gesturing for me to sit. "She's just finishing up a call." I perched on the edge of an uncomfortable modern sofa, feeling increasingly uneasy. "And Emma?" "At a playdate," he said dismissively. "This conversation isn't really appropriate for children." Before I could respond, Olivia entered, her expression unreadable. She sat beside Nathan, across from me, creating a clear visual division in the room. "Mom," she began, her voice eerily calm. "We've been discussing what you told me at the cafe. About the house still being in your name?" I nodded. "I think we need to revisit our arrangement, establish clearer boundaries about—" "We've consulted an attorney," Nathan interrupted. "He believes we have a strong case for adverse possession." The legal term caught me off guard. Adverse possession, that's for abandoned properties or boundary disputes. This doesn't apply here. 7 years of exclusive use, Nathan continued as if I hadn't spoken. Making improvements, paying the property taxes. Our attorney thinks differently. "I've allowed you to live here," I reminded them, struggling to keep my composure. "With my full knowledge and consent, that's not adverse possession. And you haven't been paying the property taxes. I have." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Olivia's face, but Nathan pressed on. "That's not how we remember the arrangement. We understood that the house was a gift, that you were giving us ownership. That was never the agreement," I said firmly. "And we both know it." Nathan leaned forward, his friendly facade dropping completely. "Here's what's going to happen, Maggie. You're going to sign the deed over to us, properly this time. In exchange, we won't contest your visitation rights. With Emma." The threat was so blatant, so cruel, that for a moment I couldn't breathe. "You would use my granddaughter as leverage?" I finally managed to ask, looking directly at Olivia. "You would keep me from seeing Emma if I don't give you the house?" Olivia at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, but she didn't contradict Nathan. "Mom, this is our home. We've built our life here. Emma has never known any other house." "And you've been supporting us financially for years," Nathan added. "If that suddenly stops, people might wonder why, including Emma." I stood up, shaking with a combination of anger and disbelief. "I need to use the restroom." It was a desperate ploy to gain a moment alone, to think. As I walked down the hallway, I pulled out my phone and quickly texted Richard. "At Elmwood Estate, Nathan threatening to keep Emma from me unless I sign. Overdeed. Need help." I splashed cold water on my face in the bathroom, trying to calm down enough to think clearly. When I emerged, I planned to stall them, to say I needed time to consider their proposal. But as I approached the living room, I overheard Nathan speaking. "Once she signs it over, we can finally sell this place," he was saying. "The developer's offer is still on the table. We could be looking at 7 figures, Liv." "What about Emma? She loves this house," Olivia replied, her voice uncertain. "We'll buy something better. Something that isn't stuck in the past like your mother." They were planning to sell Elmwood Estate, the home where James and I had built our lives, where Olivia had grown up, where Emma was making her own memories. They weren't fighting for their home. They were fighting for a payday. I must have made a noise because they both looked up suddenly, spotting me in the doorway. "You're planning to sell the house?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Nathan recovered quickly, his expression smoothing into practiced concern. "Maggie, you weren't meant to hear that. We're just exploring all options for our future." "By selling my home out from under me? By threatening to keep my granddaughter away if I don't cooperate?" "Mom, please try to understand," Olivia began, but I cut her off. "I understand perfectly. Now," I said, a strange calm settling over me. "And my answer is no. I will not be signing over the deed." Nathan's face darkened. "Then I'm afraid you've made your choice. About Emma, I mean." "I'm leaving now," I said, turning toward the foyer. "We'll continue this discussion when you're both willing to be reasonable." I had almost reached the front door when I felt Nathan's hand on my arm, gripping tightly. "No, we'll finish this today," he insisted, steering me away from the exit. "Let go of me," I demanded, trying to pull away. "Nathan," Olivia said warningly from behind us. "Not like this." He ignored her, continuing to guide me forcefully down the hallway. "You need some time to reconsider your position, Maggie. The guest room should give you plenty of space to think." Before I fully realized what was happening, he had maneuvered me into the guest bedroom at the far end of the house. "We'll talk again when you're ready to be reasonable," he said, closing the door firmly. I reached for the handle, only to hear the distinctive click of a lock engaging from the outside. "Nathan," I called, rattling the door handle. "Open this door immediately." "Take all the time you need, Maggie," he called back, his voice fading as he walked away. I stood there in shock, unable to process what had just happened. My son-in-law had just locked me, a 68-year-old woman, in a bedroom in my own house, and my daughter had allowed it. When I watched my son-in-law Nathan slide the antique key into the guest room door and turn it with a soft click, I realized just how badly I had misjudged my own family. "You'll stay here until you calm down, Maggie," he said through the heavy oak door, his voice eerily calm. "We can't have you upsetting Emma with all these accusations." I pressed my palm against the cool wood, feeling the vibration as he walked away down the hallway of the mansion that, unbeknownst to him, I still legally owned. The deed to Elmwood Estate was safely tucked away in my lawyer's office downtown. It would be my last card to play, but not quite yet. I rattled the doorknob once more, just to be certain, but there was no doubt. I was locked in the guest room of my own house. First disbelief, then anger swept through me in alternating waves. How dare he? How dare Olivia stand by and let this happen? I fumbled for my phone, hands trembling with indignation, only to realize it wasn't in my pocket. With a sinking feeling, I remembered placing it on the entryway table when I arrived, a habit from years of visiting. They had effectively cut me off from the outside world. The room was beautiful, of course. Every room in Elmwood Estate was. Even with Nathan and Olivia's modernizing efforts, they hadn't gotten to this part of the house yet. The original crown molding still traced the high ceiling. The four-poster bed that James and I had purchased at an antique auction 30 years ago dominated the space, my own cherished possessions, now keeping me prisoner. I went to the window, hoping for an easy escape, only to find it painted shut years ago for energy efficiency. The only other door led to an ensuite bathroom, no exit there. I was well, and truly trapped until they decided to release me. What was their plan? Did they actually expect me to give in to their demands from this position of forced confinement? Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I moved to the small writing desk and sat down. Panic wouldn't help. Freya Wilson didn't raise a daughter who would fall apart in a crisis. I needed to think clearly, strategically. If they intended to keep me here until I agreed to sign over the deed, they'd be waiting a very long time. but I couldn't stay locked in this room indefinitely. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd given and given. Money, support, a place. To live, all out of love for my daughter and granddaughter. And now I was being treated like an intruder, a problem to be contained. I don't know how long I sat there, watching the afternoon sunlight shift across the hardwood floor, listening for any sound in the hallway. Eventually, I heard soft footsteps approaching, followed by a gentle knock. "Mom?" Olivia's voice was tentative. "Are you okay?" "Am I okay?" I repeated incredulously. "Your husband has locked me in a room and you're asking if I'm okay." A long pause. Then, "He shouldn't have done that, I know. But you were so upset, and we were worried about what you might do." "What I might do?" My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "In my own house?" "Mom, please," she pleaded, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Nathan's downstairs on a call. I brought you some tea and a sandwich. I'm going to unlock the door, but you have to promise not to make a scene." The lock clicked, and Olivia slipped into the room, carrying a small tray. She looked nervous, glancing back at the hallway as she closed the door behind her. But notably, she didn't lock it again. She set the tray down on the nightstand, still not meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry about all this. Nathan just gets intense sometimes when he feels cornered." "Intense?" I echoed. "Olivia, what he's done is illegal. It's false imprisonment. I could have him arrested." Her head snapped up, eyes wide with alarm. "You wouldn't." "I don't want to," I said truthfully. "What I want is for you to explain to me what's happened to you. To us. When did money and status become more important than honesty? Than family?" She sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders slumping slightly. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of my real daughter beneath the polished exterior she'd cultivated. "It wasn't all at once," she began, her voice small. "At first, we really were putting your contributions into an account for Emma. But then Nathan had some investment losses. He said if we borrowed just a little to cover them, he could make it back quickly. It was only supposed to be temporary. And then it got easier, every time. A little more here, a little more there. He'd always have a reason, a plan, for how it would all work out in the end." She twisted her wedding ring anxiously. I knew it was wrong, but by the time I realized how far it had gone, I felt trapped. How could I tell you we'd spent most of Emma's college fund? "You could have come to me," I said gently. "I would have been upset, yes, but we could have worked through it together." She shook her head. "Nathan would never have allowed that. He has to maintain the image that he's successful, that he's providing for us. If people knew we were struggling. So instead, you lied to me. You let me believe my granddaughter's future was secure while you used that money for luxury cars and country club memberships." She flinched at the accusations but didn't deny them. "I'm not proud of it, Mom. And now you're trying to take my house, the house your father worked so hard to secure for our family." "That's different," she said quickly, a flash of defensiveness returning. "We've lived here for 7 years. We've put so much into renovating and maintaining it. It should be ours, by now." "Maintaining it?" I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped. "With whose money, Olivia? And those renovations, tearing out original features, erasing the history and character of this place, you think that gives you more right to it?" She stood abruptly. "I knew you wouldn't understand. You're stuck in the past, Mom. Nathan's right. We need to move forward, create our own legacy." "By selling this house to developers?" I challenged. "I heard you both talking. That's the real plan, isn't it?" A flush of guilt colored her cheeks. "It's a business decision. This neighborhood is worth a fortune now. We could use that money to cover Nathan's gambling debts," I interrupted. Her face went pale. "How did you—" "I had you investigated," I admitted. "I didn't want to believe what was happening, but I needed to know the truth. "You had no right," she whispered. But the accusation lacked conviction. I had every right. It's my money, my house, and my granddaughter's future at stake. I stood and moved closer to her. "Olivia, listen to me. This isn't about the house or the money. It's about what's happening to our family. Nathan is dragging you down a path that will end badly for everyone, including Emma." For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw recognition in her eyes, a shadow of doubt about the choices she'd made, but then her expression hardened again. "I should go. Nathan will be looking for me." She turned toward the door, then paused. "I'll try to talk to him about letting you out, but it would be easier if you'd just agree to sign the papers." I shook my head. "I won't be coerced, Olivia. Not even by you." She left without another word, carefully closing the door behind her. I waited, listening, but she didn't lock it again. A small mercy or an oversight? Either way, it was an opportunity. I gave her 5 minutes to get downstairs, then quietly tested the doorknob. It turned easily in my hand. The hallway was empty. I could hear muffled voices from the first floor, Nathan on his call, presumably, and Olivia somewhere nearby. If I was careful, I might be able to slip out unnoticed. But to what end? Even if I escaped the house, Nathan had my phone. My car. Keys were in my purse, which I'd left in the foyer. I had no way to call for help or to leave the property, and confronting them directly had clearly backfired spectacularly. No, I needed a better plan. I retreated into the room, leaving the door unlocked, and considered my options. Richard Tanner would be expecting an update from me. When I didn't respond to his texts, he might grow concerned enough to take action. But how long would that take? Hours? Days? As I pondered this, my gaze fell on the antique desk. James had restored it himself, lovingly returning the walnut piece to its original glory. One of its special features was a hidden compartment that few people knew about. I crossed the room and knelt beside it, running my fingers along the underside of the right drawer until I found the small lever. With a soft click, a slim drawer popped out from what appeared to be solid decorative molding. James had used it to hide small treasures for Olivia when she was a child. Coins, tiny carved animals, once even a sapphire pendant for my birthday that she'd helped him select. I hadn't checked this hiding spot in years, but now curiosity guided my fingers into the narrow space. To my surprise, they encountered something cold and metallic. A phone. An old flip phone by the feel of it. I pulled it out, amazed. It was indeed an ancient Nokia that James must have stashed away years ago, possibly during one of his technology upgrades, when he'd buy the latest devices but never quite dispose of the old ones. Would it even turn on after all this time? I pressed the power button without much hope, but to my astonishment, the screen flickered to life. The battery indicator showed only 2 bars, but that might be enough. I quickly checked if it could make calls. There was no service provider active, of course, but emergency calls should still work on any phone with battery life. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the 9. Was this truly an emergency? Would calling 911 escalate the situation beyond repair? The thought of police officers arriving at Elmwood Estate, questioning my daughter, possibly arresting my son-in-law, could I really do that to my family? But then I remembered Nathan's cold voice as he turned that key, the calculated way he'd manipulated Olivia over the years, his willingness to gamble away his daughter's future. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting Emma, and even Olivia from his increasingly destructive behavior. Before I could talk myself out of it, I dialed Richard Tanner's office number, one of the few I still remembered by heart. To my immense relief, his receptionist answered, "Law offices of Tanner and Associates. How may I help you?" "This is Margaret Wilson," I said urgently. "I need to speak with Richard immediately. It's an emergency." "Mrs. Wilson?" She sounded confused. "This number isn't showing up in our system." "I'm using an old phone. Please, it's urgent." One moment, I'll see if he's available." The seconds ticked by painfully slowly until Richard's familiar voice came on the line. "Maggie? Is that you? I've been trying to reach you." "I'm locked in a room at Elmwood Estate," I explained quickly, keeping my voice low. "Nathan has essentially imprisoned me until I agree to sign over the deed. My phone and car keys are downstairs. I need help." "Good God," Richard exclaimed. "Have they harmed you physically?" "No, nothing like that. But I don't see how this ends well without intervention." "I'm calling the police immediately," he said firmly. "Sit tight. And Maggie, stay on this line with me if you can." "The battery is very low," I warned. "And I need to hide the phone. Nathan and Olivia can't know I've called you." "Understood. I'll be there as soon as possible with the authorities. Don't antagonize them in the meantime." I ended the call and quickly powered down the phone to conserve what little battery remained. After returning it to its hiding place, I moved to the bed and picked up the sandwich Olivia had brought, pretending nothing had changed. Now it was just a matter of waiting. I tried to prepare myself mentally for what would come next. The police arriving, the confrontation, the potential legal consequences for Nathan. I hated that it had come to this, but I could see no other way out. About 40 minutes later, I heard a commotion downstairs. The distant sound of the doorbell, followed by raised voices. I moved to the door, pressing my ear against it to listen more closely. "Officers, there's been a misunderstanding," Nathan was saying, his voice carrying up the stairwell. "My mother-in-law is resting upstairs. She had a bit of a senior moment earlier. My wife became concerned about her mental state." My blood boiled at his attempt to paint me as confused or senile, but I held my position, continuing to listen. "We'd like to speak with Mrs. Wilson directly," came an authoritative female voice. "If you don't mind." "Of course, but perhaps I should go up first, prepare her. She's been quite agitated today." "Mr. Parker, we'll accompany you upstairs now." I retreated from the door, sitting calmly on the edge of the bed as heavy footsteps approached. When the door swung open, Nathan stood there with 2 police officers behind him, his face a mask of concerned son-in-law that didn't reach his eyes. "Maggie, these officers would like to speak with you. Are you feeling better now?" His tone was solicitous, patronizing. "Mrs. Wilson," the female officer stepped forward. "I'm Officer Chen. Your attorney contacted us with concerns about your welfare. Are you being held here against your will?" Nathan let out a practiced laugh. "Officers, as I was explaining." "I wasn't speaking to you, sir," Officer Chen cut him off sharply, her attention focused solely on me. I stood, straightening my shoulders. "Yes, I am. My son-in-law locked me in this room when I refused to sign over the deed to this house, which I legally own. He has taken my phone and car keys to prevent me from leaving or calling for help." Nathan's face darkened. "That's not—" "Sir, please step back," the male officer instructed firmly. "Mrs. Wilson, would you like to come downstairs where we can sort this out?" "Yes, please," I said, relief washing over me. As I moved toward the door, I noticed Olivia standing frozen at the end of the hallway, her face pale with shock. The next hour passed in a blur of questions, statements, and increasingly desperate denials from Nathan. The officers took each of us aside separately to hear our versions of events. Richard arrived during this process, bringing with him the deed to Elmwood Estate and our original agreement concerning Olivia and Nathan's residency. While I was speaking privately with Officer Chen in the library, what remained of it anyway, I heard a commotion from the living room where Nathan was being questioned. "You can't be serious," he was shouting. "This is my home. I've lived here for 7 years." I exchanged glances with Officer Chen, who excused herself to check on the situation. When I joined them a few minutes later, Richard was standing beside the male officer, holding up legal documents while Nathan stood red-faced and defiant. "As you can see," Richard was explaining calmly, "Mrs. Wilson is the sole legal owner of this property. Mr. and Mrs. Parker have been permitted to live here under specific conditions, which they have violated repeatedly. Mrs. Wilson has every right to revoke that permission." "This is ridiculous," Nathan sputtered. "We've invested hundreds of thousands in renovations. You can't just throw us out." "Renovations made without my consent," I pointed out, "contrary to our written agreement." Olivia had been silent throughout this exchange, sitting on the sofa with her arms wrapped around herself. Now she looked up, her eyes swimming with tears. "Mom, please, where would we go?" The question hit me hard. Despite everything, she was still my daughter. Emma was still my granddaughter. Could I really put them out on the street? "We need to discuss this privately," I said finally. "Without the police, without lawyers. Just family." Richard looked concerned. "Maggie, after what just happened—" "I know," I assured him. "But I'd like to try one more time to resolve this ourselves before taking legal action." The officers exchanged glances. "Mrs. Wilson, if you're being coerced—" Officer Chen began. "I'm not," I said firmly. "I appreciate your concern and your assistance today, but I'd like some time to speak with my daughter alone." After some discussion, it was agreed that the officers would wait outside while Richard and I spoke privately with Olivia. Nathan, despite his protests, was asked to remain in a separate room with the male officer. Once we were alone in the kitchen, the one room that still maintained most of its original character, I turned to my daughter. "Olivia, this can't continue. You know that, don't you?" She nodded miserably, tears streaming down her face. "I never thought it would go this far. Nathan he got so angry when you wouldn't agree. He said we'd lose everything if you didn't sign over the house." "Because of his gambling debts?" I asked gently. She looked surprised that I knew, then nodded again. "It's worse than I told you earlier. He owes nearly $500,000 to some very dangerous people. They've started making threats. That's why he's so desperate to sell this place." Richard, who had been listening quietly, now spoke up. "Mrs. Parker, if your husband is involved with illegal gambling operations, that's a police matter. Those officers outside should be informed." "No," Olivia exclaimed. "You don't understand what these people are capable of. If Nathan gets arrested if he can't pay—" She trailed off, genuine fear in her eyes. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Then let's find another solution. One that doesn't involve selling Elmwood Estate or putting you and Emma at risk." "What kind of solution?" she asked skeptically. I looked at Richard, who had been my trusted advisor for decades. "What are our options?" He considered for a moment. "We could establish a formal lease agreement with rent payments that might help address some of the debt. Or we could explore a partial ownership transfer that allows Mrs. Wilson to maintain control of the property while giving the Parkers some equity." "Neither of those helps us now," Olivia said desperately. "These people want their money immediately, not in monthly installments. Then perhaps a personal loan," Richard suggested, "with the house as collateral, but remaining in Mrs. Wilson's name." I watched my daughter's face as she processed these options. The entitled, defensive woman who had confronted me earlier seemed to have disappeared, replaced by the vulnerable, frightened person I now saw before me. It reminded me painfully of when she was a child, coming to me with her problems, trusting that I could fix anything. But this wasn't a skinned knee or a failed test. This was a mess of her own, and Nathan's making. And while my instinct was still to protect her, I knew I couldn't simply bail them out without addressing the root causes. "Olivia," I said firmly, "I'm willing to help you, but there need to be conditions, non-negotiable ones." She looked up, hope and wariness battling in her expression. "What conditions?" "First, Nathan needs professional help for his gambling addiction. Real help, not just promises to stop." She hesitated, then nodded. "Second, you both need to move out of Elmwood Estate. Her head snapped up. What? Where would we go? I'll help you find and finance a smaller place, one that's within your actual means. Something you can genuinely afford on Nathan's salary. But Emma loves this house, she protested. All her friends are in this neighborhood. Emma will adjust, I said firmly. Children are resilient when they have stable, honest parents. Which brings me to my third condition: complete financial transparency going forward. I want to see all accounts, all debts, everything. Olivia looked torn, twisting her wedding ring anxiously. Nathan would never agree to this. Then Nathan has a choice to make, I said simply. My help comes with these conditions, or no help at all. And if he chooses the latter, I will be moving forward with legal proceedings, both for the false imprisonment today and for the misappropriation of Emma's education funds. Richard nodded approvingly beside me. Those are reasonable terms, Mrs. Parker. Far more generous than many would offer in Mrs. Wilson's position. Olivia was quiet for a long time, staring down at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. What about Emma's education money? Is it all gone? I'll establish a new trust, I said, with ironclad protections that ensure it can only be used for its intended purpose. Neither you nor Nathan will have access to it. She winced at that but didn't argue. And the gambling debts? How would that work? I'll pay them directly, I stated. Once. This is a one-time bailout, Olivia. It comes with the understanding that if Nathan ever gambles again, you're on your own. She swallowed hard. I'll need to talk to him. Of course, I agreed. But remember, these terms aren't up for negotiation. They're the only way forward, that keeps this family intact in any form. As she stood to leave, she paused, looking around the kitchen with new eyes. I never really appreciated this place, did I? The history, what it meant to you and Dad. It wasn't just about the house, I said softly. It was about respect, honesty, the values I thought we shared. She nodded, unable to meet my gaze. I'll talk to Nathan. After she left to join her husband in the living room, Richard turned to me. You're doing the right thing, Maggie, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Am I? I sighed. Sometimes, I wonder if I've been too soft on her for too long. If I'd been stricter earlier? Don't go down that road, he advised. We all do the best we can with the information we have at the time. I smiled gratefully at my old friend. Thank you for coming to my rescue today. I don't know what would have happened if... But I did come, he cut in. Because you've spent a lifetime building relationships with people who care about you. That's not nothing, Maggie. Before I could respond, the kitchen door opened again. Olivia stood there, looking defeated. He won't agree. He says if we leave Elmwood, we might as well declare bankruptcy now. And he refuses to attend any kind of addiction counseling. He says he doesn't have a problem, just a run of bad luck. I wasn't surprised, but my heart ached for her nonetheless. Then you have a decision to make, Olivia. A difficult one. Her eyes widened as she understood my meaning. You're asking me to choose between you and my husband. No, I corrected gently. I'm asking you to choose between enabling self-destructive behavior and finding a healthier path forward, for yourself and for Emma. She leaned against the doorframe, suddenly looking exhausted. I don't know if I can leave him, Mom, after everything we've built together. What have you built exactly? I asked, not unkindly. A life of secrets and debts? A foundation of lies? Is that really what you want for Emma's future? She didn't answer, but her silence spoke volumes. The confident, polished exterior had completely crumbled now, revealing the frightened, uncertain woman beneath. You don't have to decide this minute, I assured her, but you do need to decide. As we prepared to leave the kitchen and rejoin the others, I stopped beside her. Whatever you choose, Olivia, I want you to know something. I love you. That hasn't changed, even through all of this. It never will. For the first time that day, she met my eyes directly. I don't deserve that. Love isn't about deserving, I told her simply. It's about choosing, every day, to put someone else's well-being alongside your own. It's something Nathan might never understand, but I hope you still do. We returned to the living room where Nathan was pacing angrily while the officer watched him with barely concealed disdain. When he saw us, he immediately launched into accusations. "This is elder abuse, what you're doing," he spat at Richard, taking advantage of my mother-in-law's confusion to try and steal our home. "We have rights." "Nathan, stop," Olivia said, her voice stronger than I'd heard it all day. "Mom isn't confused, and this isn't our home. It never was." He froze, staring at her in disbelief. "What are you talking about? Whose side are you on?" "There shouldn't be sides in a family," she replied quietly. "That's part of the problem." Nathan's face contorted with rage. "So that's it? You're just going to let them throw us out? Where's your loyalty?" "My loyalty?" Olivia echoed, something hardening in her expression. "Where was your loyalty when you gambled away our daughter's college fund? When you lied to me about the extent of your debts? When you locked my mother in a room against her will?" The officers, who had been watching this exchange with professional detachment, now moved closer to Nathan as his body language grew more agitated. "Mrs. Parker," Officer Chen said calmly, "would you like to file charges against your husband for his actions today?" Olivia looked at Nathan, then at me, conflict evident in her eyes. I don't know." "Liv, you can't be serious," Nathan hissed. "After everything we've been through together?" I stepped forward. "I'll be pressing charges," I stated clearly. "What happens between Olivia and Nathan is their decision, but I won't pretend today didn't happen." Nathan lunged toward me, only to be immediately restrained by the male officer. "You'll regret this," he snarled as they secured his hands behind his back. "Both of you will." As they led him away, reading him his rights, Olivia stood frozen, in the center of the room, tears streaming silently down her face. I moved to her side, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now," I said softly, "we start rebuilding. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight, but we take it one day at a time." She turned to me then, finally allowing herself to be embraced as she sobbed against my shoulder like she hadn't done since she was a child. I held her tightly, my own tears falling into her hair, mourning what we'd lost but tentatively hopeful about what we might still save. As I stood there in the grand entrance hall of Elmwood Estate, my home, with its blend of cherished history and unwelcome changes, I realized that the deed I'd been so determined to protect was just paper in the end. The true ownership that mattered wasn't of property, but of choices. The choice to be honest, to stand firm, to offer both consequences and compassion. And perhaps most importantly, the choice to believe that even after the worst betrayals, the most painful revelations, there remained the possibility of redemption. Not through grand gestures or easy forgiveness, but through the harder path of accountability, atonement, and the slow, painstaking work of rebuilding trust. As Richard approached with paperwork for my statement, I gave Olivia's shoulder a final squeeze before stepping away. Whatever came next, I would face it with the same principle that had guided me through this ordeal. Love without enabling, support. Without surrender. The road ahead would be long, but at least now it was visible. And for the first time in years, I felt like we might actually be walking it together. The police station was nothing like I'd imagined. Despite watching countless crime dramas over the years, the reality was far more mundane. Fluorescent lighting that cast everyone in a sickly pallor, uncomfortable plastic chairs, and the persistent smell of industrial cleaner barely masking something less pleasant. Officer Chen had been kind enough to bring me a cup of tea that now sat cooling on the metal table between us as I finished giving my formal statement. So, after Mr. Parker locked you in the guest room, your daughter brought you food, but left. The door unlocked? Officer Chen confirmed, her pen poised above her notepad. Yes, I replied, surprised at how steady my voice sounded despite the emotional turmoil of the past few hours. I believe she was conflicted. She didn't agree with what Nathan had done, but she wasn't ready to openly defy him either. The officer nodded, making another note. And you found an old cell phone hidden in a desk compartment, which you used to contact your attorney? That's correct. My late husband had a habit of storing old technology rather than disposing of it. Thank goodness for that now. Richard Tanner, who had insisted on accompanying me to the station, placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Maggie has provided you with the deed to Elmwood Estate and our original agreement with the Parkers. It clearly stipulates that while they may reside in the home, ownership remains solely with Mrs. Wilson. Officer Chen closed her notebook. We have more than enough to hold Mr. Parker on charges of false imprisonment. The district attorney will determine if additional charges are warranted. She hesitated, then added more gently, Mrs. Wilson, I should inform you that your daughter declined to press charges against her husband. Though I'd expected as much, the confirmation still stung. I understand. She's waiting in the reception area. Would you like to speak with her before you leave? I exchanged glances with Richard, who gave a slight nod. Yes, I would. As Officer Chen left to fetch Olivia, Richard leaned closer. You don't have to do this now, Maggie. It's been a traumatic day. No one would blame you for wanting some distance. I know, I sighed. But if I've learned anything from this mess, it's that avoiding difficult conversations only makes things worse in the long run. The door opened, and Olivia entered, looking smaller somehow without Nathan beside her. Her carefully applied makeup had smudged around her eyes, and her usually perfect hair hung limply around her face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. They're keeping him overnight, she finally said, her voice hoarse. The bail hearing is tomorrow morning. I nodded. Are you planning to post his bail? She looked away. I don't know. Our assets are frozen. I'd need to... She trailed off, but the implication was clear. She'd need my help. Olivia, I began carefully, what are your plans now? Will you go back to Elmwood tonight? I don't know that either, she admitted. Emma's at a sleepover, thankfully. She doesn't know any of this is happening. But Her voice cracked slightly. I don't want to be alone in that house tonight. Richard cleared his throat. I should give you two some privacy. Maggie, I'll be right outside when you're ready to leave. After he departed, an awkward silence fell between us. I studied my daughter, this woman who had become almost a stranger to me over the years. Despite everything, my heart ached for her. She looked lost, adrift without Nathan's controlling presence to dictate her next move. You could stay with me tonight, I offered quietly. My condo isn't Elmwood, but the guest room is comfortable. Her eyes widened in surprise. You'd let me stay with you? After everything that's happened? You're still my daughter, Olivia. That hasn't changed. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. I don't understand you, Mom. How can you be so calm about all this? Nathan locked you in a room. I stood by and let it happen. We've been lying to you for years about Emma's college fund. We tried to take your house. Her voice rose with each admission. Why aren't you screaming at me right now? Why aren't you telling me what a terrible daughter I've been? I considered her question carefully. Would that help either of us? Would my anger change what's happened or fix what's broken between us? Maybe it should, she whispered. Maybe I deserve it. This isn't about what you deserve, I said firmly. It's about what happens next. You have difficult decisions ahead, Olivia. I won't pretend otherwise. But you don't have to face them alone, not unless you choose to. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'd like to stay with you tonight, if that's still okay. Of course. When Richard dropped us off at my modest two-bedroom condo in Westview Gardens, the contrast between my simple home and the mansion Olivia had grown accustomed to couldn't have been more stark. My furniture was comfortable but well-worn, my decor practical rather than fashionable. The space was a quarter the size of Elmwood's first floor alone. "It's cozy," Olivia offered, clearly trying to be polite as she set her hastily packed overnight bag beside the sofa. I couldn't help a small smile. "It's enough for me. The guest room is down the hall on the right, bathrooms across from it. Make yourself at home while I fix us something to eat." As I moved about the kitchen, preparing a simple meal of soup and sandwiches, I watched Olivia wander around the living room, examining the framed photos on my walls. She paused at one of her and Emma, taken 3 Christmases ago, one of the few recent pictures I had of them. "You look tired, Mom," she said suddenly, turning to face me. The observation caught me off guard. When was the last time she had really looked at me? Had shown any concern for my well-being? "It's been a long day," I replied mildly. She shook her head. "Not just today. In general. You look worn out." I placed 2 bowls of soup on the small dining table. "I'm 68, Olivia. Not exactly a spring chicken anymore." "That's not what I mean." She joined me at the table but didn't touch her food. "You've been carrying so much, supporting us financially, worrying about Emma's future, and all while I've been..." She trailed off, her gaze dropping to her bowl. "Taking it for granted?" I supplied gently. She nodded, a flush of shame coloring her cheeks. "Worse than that, feeling entitled to it. Acting like you owed us something." "Why did you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "When did that shift happen?" She considered the question, stirring her soup absently. "I think it started when we moved into Elmwood. Nathan always resented that it wasn't truly ours, that we needed your permission for changes, that our living there was ultimately at your discretion. He'd say things like, 'It's not really our home,' or 'We're just glorified house sitters.' And you began to see it that way too?" "Not at first," she admitted. "But over time, it's hard to explain. Nathan has this way of reshaping how you see things. Little comments here and there, subtle but persistent. Eventually, I started feeling like we deserved more, like we were somehow being shortchanged by the arrangement." I nodded, recognizing the classic signs of manipulation I'd seen so many times during my years as a principal, usually in parents making excuses for their children's behavior. "And the money for Emma's education?" Olivia winced. "That was different. We really did start a fund for her, but then Nathan made some bad investments, and we needed to cover them before his parents visited. He swore he'd pay it back double, once the market turned around. But it never did?" "It did, actually. Twice." She gave a bitter laugh. "But by then, we'd gotten used to a certain lifestyle. The country club memberships, the luxury car, designer clothes. Once you start living that way, it's hard to go back." I took a spoonful of soup, letting her words sink in. "Olivia, how much does Nathan actually make at his firm?" She hesitated. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure anymore. He handles all the finances. I have an allowance for household expenses, but beyond that..." She shrugged helplessly. "The last time I saw a full accounting was maybe 3 years ago. His base salary was around $120,000 then. And your household expenses? The mortgage, utilities, Emma's school tuition? At least $15,000 a month, probably more with all the renovations." I did the math quickly in my head. Even with my monthly contributions, the numbers didn't add up. "Olivia, that's not sustainable. Not on his salary alone." "I know that," she said, a hint of defensiveness creeping back into her tone. "But Nathan always said he had investments, side projects bringing in additional income." "Like gambling?" Her face fell. I didn't know about that until recently. He told me he was networking with clients at the club. I had no idea he was playing high-stakes poker 3 nights a week. I wanted to ask how she could have been so blind, so willfully ignorant of their financial reality, but the defeated slump of her shoulders stopped me. Instead, I asked, "What will you do now? If Nathan is convicted, or even if he's not, can you continue living this way?" "I don't see how," she whispered. "The credit cards are all maxed out. The bank has called twice about missed mortgage payments. Payments I thought Nathan was making. Emma's school is threatening to withdraw her if the next term's tuition isn't paid by the end of the month." She looked up, her eyes hollow with fear. "I don't even know where to begin fixing this mess." I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. "We'll figure it out together. But Olivia, you need to be completely honest with me from now on. No more secrets, no more schemes. I can't help if I don't know what we're really dealing with." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything." Later that night, after Olivia had retired to the guest room, I sat alone in my small living room, mentally cataloging the day's events. My daughter was sleeping under my roof for the first time in years. My son-in-law was in jail. My granddaughter was blissfully unaware at a friend's house. And I was left trying to make sense of how my family had unraveled so completely. My phone chimed with a text from Richard. "How are you holding up? Need anything?" I typed back, "We're managing. Thank you for everything today." "What's your plan for tomorrow?" he replied. That was the question, wasn't it? What came next? I had no blueprint for navigating this situation, no principal's handbook for dealing with familial betrayal and financial deceit. "Taking it one step at a time," I wrote back. "We'll call you in the morning." As I prepared for bed, I heard muffled crying from the guest room. I paused outside the door, debating whether to knock. Would Olivia welcome my comfort, or would she see it as an intrusion? Before I could decide, my phone rang, Emma's special ringtone. I quickly answered, keeping my voice low. "Emma? Sweetheart, it's late. Is everything okay at your sleepover?" "Grandma!" Her young voice was high with excitement. "Guess what? Lily's mom is taking us to the aquarium tomorrow. Can I go? Please?" The normalcy of her request, so disconnected from the day's drama, was almost jarring. "Of course you can, sweetheart. That sounds wonderful." "Where's Mom?" I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. I hesitated. "Your mom she's actually staying with me tonight. Her phone might be turned off." "Is she okay?" Emma asked immediately, her perceptiveness reminding me so much of Olivia at that age. "She's just tired, honey. It's been a long day for her. Would you like me to have her call you in the morning?" "No, that's okay. Just tell her I love her and that I'm having the best time ever at Lily's." She giggled, the sound warming my heart despite everything. "Love you too, Grandma. Bye." After hanging up, I knocked gently on Olivia's door. "Olivia, are you awake?" A pause then. "Come in." She was sitting up in bed, hastily wiping away tears. Was that Emma? I nodded, settling on the edge of the bed. She called for permission to go to the aquarium tomorrow with her friend Lily. She sounds like she's having a wonderful time. Olivia gave a watery smile. "That's good. I'm glad that she doesn't know about any of this." "She asked about you," I continued. "Wanted to make sure you were okay. She said to tell you she loves you." Fresh tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "I don't deserve her. Or you." "That's not true," I said firmly. "You've made mistakes, serious ones. But you're not beyond redemption, Olivia. Not unless you choose to be." She twisted the wedding ring on her finger, a nervous habit I'd noticed earlier. "What if I can't fix this? What if it's too broken?" "Then we start over," I said simply. "Sometimes that's the only way forward." Her eyes met mine, searching for reassurance. "You mean leave Nathan?" I sighed. I can't make that decision for you. But ask yourself this. Is the life you've been living with him sustainable? Is it healthy for you, for Emma? If Nathan is released tomorrow, if you go back to Elmwood with him, what changes? She fell silent, considering my questions. Finally, she whispered, "Nothing changes. We'd just find ourselves back here in a few months, wouldn't we? Different crisis, same patterns." I squeezed her hand. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges." As predicted, the next day arrived with a flurry of complications. Nathan's bail hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. Olivia spent the morning alternating between anxious pacing and tearful phone calls, first with Emma to wish her a good day at the aquarium, then with Nathan's attorney, and finally with her father-in-law, Robert Parker. That last call had been particularly difficult to overhear. Robert's voice had been loud enough through the phone that I could make out his angry accusations even from across the room. "Your mother has gone too far this time," he'd thundered. "Nathan told us how she's trying to steal the house from under you, after everything you two have done to make that place livable." Olivia had attempted to explain the situation, but Robert wasn't interested in facts. "We're not bailing him out just so your mother can continue this vendetta," he declared. "Nathan says she's been interfering in your marriage for years. It's time you both stood up to her." After hanging up, Olivia looked shell-shocked. "They believe everything Nathan's told them. They think you're the villain in all this." "That's hardly surprising," I noted, keeping my tone neutral. "Nathan has always been good at crafting narratives that cast him in the best light." She nodded slowly. "I believed them too, didn't I? All the stories about how you were controlling, how you were holding us back, how we deserved more than you. We're giving." She pressed her palms against her eyes. God, how did I not see through it? I didn't answer directly. "Will his parents post bail?" "No," she said, dropping her hands. "They said if we'd been more responsible with our money, we'd have enough to handle this ourselves." A hollow laugh escaped her. "The irony is, they're right about that much. We should have had savings, emergency funds. Instead, we have debt. So much debt." Richard arrived shortly before the bail hearing, bringing with him a young associate who specialized in family law. Together, we developed a provisional plan. I would not oppose Nathan's release, but I would file for an emergency restraining order preventing him from returning to Elmwood Estate. Olivia and Emma would temporarily stay with me while we sorted out the financial entanglements. "What about our things?" Olivia asked. "Our clothes, Emma's toys, and school supplies. We can arrange for a police escort so you can retrieve essential items," Richard explained. "But I strongly advise against you going alone, especially if Nathan makes bail." The bail hearing itself was brief but tense. Nathan looked markedly different in his orange jumpsuit, the confident facade cracked to reveal the desperation beneath. When he spotted Olivia sitting beside me rather than with his parents, his expression darkened. The judge set bail at $50,000, an amount that elicited a visible flinch from Nathan. "Your Honor," his attorney began, "Mr. Parker is an upstanding member of the community with significant ties to the area. We request a reduction in bail, as this amount represents an undue hardship." The judge peered over her glasses. "Mr. Parker is charged with false imprisonment of a senior citizen, his own mother-in-law. If that doesn't concern the court regarding his judgment and potential flight risk, I don't know what would. Bail remains as set." As the bailiff led Nathan away, he turned his head to lock eyes with Olivia. The mixture of anger and pleading in that gaze made me instinctively move closer to my daughter, as if I could physically shield her from his influence. Outside the courtroom, Robert and Judith Parker waited, their expressions cold. "Olivia," Judith called stiffly, "we need to speak with you, privately." Olivia hesitated, glancing at me. "Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of my mother." Robert's face reddened. "After what she's done?" Throwing our son in jail over a family disagreement? It wasn't a disagreement, Dad, Olivia replied, using the familiar address despite the tension. Nathan locked my mother in a room against her will. That's a crime. He was protecting his home. Robert insisted. She was threatening to take it away. It's not our home, Olivia said quietly. It never was. Mom owns Elmwood Estate. We were allowed to live there under specific conditions, which we violated repeatedly. Judith's perfectly made-up face twisted in contempt. So you're choosing her side now? After everything we've done for you? Olivia straightened her shoulders. I'm choosing the truth. For once. The older couple exchanged glances. Well, Judith said coldly, I suppose that clarifies matters. Don't expect us to bail Nathan out when you've clearly abandoned him. And don't come running to us when this all blows over, Robert added. You've made your choice. As they strode away, Olivia released a shuddering breath. That felt both terrible and strangely liberating. I squeezed her hand. Standing, up for the truth often does. Richard approached, having watched the exchange from a respectful distance. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to discuss immediate next steps. Based on the bail amount, it's unlikely Nathan will be released today unless he can find someone to post bond. That gives us some time to secure Elmwood Estate and retrieve your essentials. Olivia nodded. What about Nathan's personal belongings? His clothes, his laptop? We can have those packed and delivered to his parents' home, Richard suggested. That way, if he makes bail, he has somewhere to go that isn't Elmwood. As we left the courthouse, I noticed Olivia staring up at the imposing granite building with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. What are you thinking? I asked gently. That I never imagined my life would come to this, she replied. Oh, restraining order against my husband, moving back in with my mother, starting over at 36. She shook her head. It feels like failure. Or a new beginning, I countered, depending on how you choose to see it. She gave me a sideways glance. When did you become so philosophical, Mom? Around the time I realized I might lose my daughter forever if I didn't find a way to separate my hurt from my love for her. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know if I can be as forgiving as you. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing, I told her. It means choosing not to let the pain determine your path forward. I'm still working on it myself. Richard drove us to Elmwood Estate, where 2 police officers were waiting to escort us inside. The house felt different somehow. Colder, emptier, despite the expensive furnishings and modern renovations. As we walked through the rooms, I felt a curious detachment. This place that had once meant so much to me, that held so many precious memories of James and our life together, now seemed like a monument to excess and deception. Take only what you need for the next few weeks, Richard advised Olivia. Clothing, toiletries, important documents. We can make arrangements for the rest once the situation stabilizes. While Olivia packed essentials for herself and Emma, I wandered into what had once been my favorite room, the library. The beautiful mahogany paneling was gone, replaced by sterile white walls. The built-in bookshelves where James had displayed his collection of first editions had been ripped out in favor of floating glass shelves that held more decorative objects than books. It was like walking through the ghost of a place I'd once loved. Officer Chen joined me, her expression sympathetic. Are you all right, Mrs. Wilson? Yes, I said, somewhat surprised to realize it was true. I'm just saying goodbye, in a way. She nodded understandingly. What will you do with the house now? It was a question I hadn't fully considered until that moment. I'm not sure yet. Sell it, perhaps. It's too large for me, and it holds too many complicated feelings now. Mom? Olivia appeared in the doorway, several suitcases behind her. I've got everything we need for now. Emma's things, our documents, enough clothes for a few weeks. Good, I said, giving the room one final glance before turning away. Let's go home. The word hung between us, laden with meaning. What was home now? My small condo? This grand house that had become a battleground? Or something else entirely? A sense of safety and belonging that transcended physical space. As we loaded Olivia's belongings into Richard's car, my phone rang. The display showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mrs. Wilson? A gruff male voice. This is Robert Parker, Nathan's father. I stepped away from the others, lowering my voice. Yes, Mr. Parker. What can I do for you? I want to make you an offer, he stated bluntly. For Elmwood Estate. I'll pay market value in cash. You get your money, Nathan stays out of jail, and everyone moves on with their lives. The directness of his approach momentarily took me aback. Mr. Parker, the house isn't for sale, at least not to your family. Be reasonable, he pressed. What do you gain by pursuing these charges? Nathan made a mistake, but is it worth destroying? Your daughter's marriage over? I felt a surge of indignation. My daughter's marriage was in trouble long before yesterday's events. Nathan's gambling, his lies, his manipulation, those are what damaged their relationship, not my actions. So that's it? You won't even consider an offer that could fix this situation for everyone? I glanced over at Olivia, who was speaking, quietly with Officer Chen. Mr. Parker, I don't think you understand. This isn't about the house anymore. It's about honesty, respect, and rebuilding trust, none of which can be bought with a cash offer, no matter how generous. You'll regret this, he warned, an echo of Nathan's threat from the day before. You think you're protecting Olivia, but you're just controlling her, like Nathan says. She'll see that eventually. I ended the call without responding, unwilling to engage further with his accusations. As I rejoined the others, Olivia gave me a questioning look. Your father-in-law, I explained. He wanted to buy Elmwood Estate. Her eyes widened. Why would he owe? Understanding dawned. To protect Nathan? To make the charges go away? I nodded. Among other reasons, I'm sure. She shook her head in disbelief. They still don't get it, do they? This was never really about the house. No, I agreed. It wasn't. As we prepared to leave, I paused at the grand entrance one last time, my hand resting on the ornate banister that Nathan and Olivia had somehow overlooked in their modernization frenzy. James had loved this house not for its grandeur, but for what it represented: security for our family's future, a legacy to pass down. Somehow, it had become the very thing that threatened to tear us apart. Goodbye, old friend, I murmured to the empty foyer. You deserved better than this. Later that evening, as Olivia and I sat in my modest living room making lists of all that needed attention, financial accounts to freeze, creditors to contact, Emma's school situation to address, my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID displayed the county jail. Olivia froze, her pen hovering above her notebook. Is that... I nodded, showing her the screen. Should I answer? She hesitated, then squared her shoulders. Put it on speaker. I want to hear what he has to say. I accepted the call. Nathan. Maggie. His voice came through, artificially cheerful despite the automated message about the call being recorded. How are you? I hope you're well. I'm fine, Nathan, I replied evenly. Olivia is here with me. You're on speaker. A pause, then his tone shifted, becoming more intimate. Liv, baby, I've been so worried about you. Are you okay? Is Emma with you? Emma is with friends, Olivia answered, her voice steadier than I'd expected. She's fine. Good, he continued. Listen, there's been a huge misunderstanding. The DA is willing to drop the charges if your mother doesn't press forward. We can put this whole mess behind us. I raised an eyebrow at Olivia, who looked equally skeptical. Is that so? I asked. And who told you that, Nathan? My attorney. Spoke with the prosecutor, he said smoothly. They recognized this as a family matter that got out of hand. No harm done, really. No harm? I echoed. You locked me in a room against my will. You threatened to keep me from seeing my granddaughter if I didn't sign over my house. That's not exactly how it happened, he countered, his voice taking on a wounded quality. I was upset, yes. We all said things we didn't mean. But Maggie, is it worth tearing the family apart over a momentary lapse in judgment? Before I could respond, Olivia spoke up. Nathan, stop. Just stop. We know about the gambling debts. We know about the plans to sell Elmwood to developers. All of it. Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, the false warmth had evaporated from his tone. So that's how it is? You're both against me now? We're not against you, Olivia said wearily. We're for the truth, something you've had trouble with for a long time. And you're so perfect? He shot back, anger seeping through. You enjoyed the lifestyle, Liv. The clothes, the vacations, the status. Don't pretend you didn't know where the money was coming from. I watched my daughter's face as the accusation landed. She flinched, but didn't back down. You're right, she admitted. I chose to believe your lies because the truth was too uncomfortable. I'm not pretending to be innocent in all this. His voice softened again, becoming cajoling. Then come home, Liv. We can work this out together, like we always do. I'll get help for the gambling, I promise. We'll be more transparent with your mother about Emma's education fund. Everything can go back to normal. Normal? Olivia repeated, a bitter edge to her laugh. Nathan, our normal was built on lies. It was never real to begin with. So what? You're leaving me? Just like that? After everything we've been through? She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with new resolve. I need time to think. Real time, not just until your next crisis or scheme. And Nathan, I need you to be honest, truly honest for once. Can you do that? Can you tell me exactly how much gambling debt you have? Can you admit that you were planning to sell Elmwood without Mom's knowledge? The silence stretched so long, I thought the call might have disconnected. Finally, Nathan sighed. You want honesty? Fine. I owe just over $450,000 to people you don't want to know. And yes, I had a buyer lined up for Elmwood, $2.8 million for the property, which they'd demolished to build luxury condos. Happy now? Olivia's face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. Thank you for finally telling me the truth. I need to go now. Liv, wait, he pleaded. Don't hang up. At least tell me if you're coming to the bail hearing tomorrow. I need you there. She glanced at me, uncertainty flickering across her features. I kept my expression neutral, determined not to influence her decision. I don't know yet, she finally said. Goodbye, Nathan. After ending the call, she sat motionless, staring at the phone as if it might suddenly sprout fangs. $450,000, she whispered. How is that even possible? And he was going to sell Elmwood for condos. I moved to sit beside her on the sofa. Are you okay? She shook her head. No, but I think I might be, eventually. She turned to face me fully. I'm not going to bail him out, Mom. Not this time. I took her hand in mine. That's your decision to make. Whatever you choose, I'll support you. Thank you, she whispered, leaning against my shoulder like she used to as a child. For everything. As the evening deepened into night, we continued making plans and lists, steadily mapping a path forward through the wreckage of what had once seemed a perfect life. It wouldn't be easy, nothing worthwhile ever is. But with each honest conversation, each difficult truth faced, I felt something fragile beginning to take root between us. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not yet. But perhaps something equally valuable, a foundation for rebuilding, one honest brick at a time. The Historical Society's annual reception was in full swing when I arrived. The grand ballroom of the Millfield Cultural Center transformed with twinkling lights and elegant floral arrangements. Several longtime residents approached me immediately, expressing their concern over what they'd heard about the unfortunate incident at Elmwood Estate. News travels quickly in small towns, especially when it involves the arrest of someone as outwardly respected as Nathan Parker. Maggie, we were absolutely appalled to hear what happened, Elaine Whitman said, clasping my hand in both of hers. As chairwoman of the Historical Society and a fixture in Millfield's social circles, Elaine had known James and me for decades. Is there anything we can do? You're very kind, I replied, appreciating her sincerity while feeling uncomfortable as the center of attention. But things are settling now. Olivia and Emma are staying with me and we're finding our footing. Well, you just say the word if you need anything at all, she insisted. The Historical Society stands firmly behind you. That house is part of Millfield's heritage, and we were all distressed to hear about the modernization happening under the Parkers' watch. I had to suppress a smile at that addition. Elaine's concern for my welfare was genuine, but her passion for historical preservation was legendary. The thought of original mahogany paneling being replaced with stark white walls was practically criminal in her eyes, perhaps worse than my false imprisonment. Actually, there is something, I said, seizing the opportunity. With everything that's happened, I'm considering selling Elmwood. I'd want it to go to someone who would appreciate its historical significance and perhaps restore some of what's been lost. Would the society have any recommendations? Elaine's eyes widened. Selling? Oh my. She recovered quickly, her mind already working. As a matter of fact, I may know just the people. The Hendersons. They restored the old Abbott mansion over in Riverside. Did a magnificent job maintaining its character while making it livable for modern times. They've been looking for another project. I'd appreciate an introduction when the time comes, I told her, grateful for this potential pathway forward. The idea of selling Elmwood had been forming gradually over the past week, becoming more definite with each passing day. The mansion held too many complicated memories now, and maintaining it while supporting Olivia and Emma through this transition would be financially draining. As I moved through the reception, engaging in careful conversations that revealed little, while acknowledging the community's concern, I spotted Susan across the room. She waved me over to where she stood with an elegantly dressed man I didn't recognize. "Maggie, there you are," she said warmly. "I'd like you to meet Dr. Lawrence Fitzgerald. He's the new director of the university's Architectural Heritage Program. Lawrence, this is Margaret Wilson, former principal of Millfield Elementary and owner of one of our town's most significant historical properties, Elmwood Estate." "A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Wilson," he said, extending his hand. "I've admired Elmwood from afar. The Victorian details on the facade are remarkably intact for a building of that period." "The interior has some equally impressive features," I replied, "though I'm afraid some have been compromised by recent renovations." His face fell slightly. "That's always unfortunate to hear. Period details are irreplaceable once lost." "Some are still salvageable," I assured him. "The library was the main casualty, but much of the original woodwork remains intact elsewhere, just hidden beneath modern paint and wallpaper." His eyes lit up with genuine interest. "Have you considered historical designation? It would prevent future modifications without proper oversight." "I'm actually considering selling the property," I admitted. "To the right buyers, of course, people who would appreciate its historical significance and be willing to undertake appropriate restoration." "What a remarkable coincidence," Dr. Fitzgerald said. "The university has been searching for a property to serve as our Architectural Heritage Program's headquarters and teaching facility. Something with authentic period details that students could study and help restore as part of their practical education." Susan gave me a meaningful look. That sounds like a perfect match, doesn't it? Before I could respond, my phone vibrated with an incoming call. Emma's school appeared on the screen. "Excuse me, I need to take this," I said, stepping away with a growing sense of concern. The school rarely called unless there was a problem. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Patricia Danvers from Millfield Elementary. I'm calling about Emma." "Is everything all right?" I asked, my worry intensifying. "She's not hurt," Mrs. Danvers assured me quickly. "But there was an incident during recess. Emma became very upset when another child made some comments about her father. We've addressed the bullying aspect, but Emma is quite distraught. She's asking for you or her mother." "I'll be right there," I promised, ending the call and returning to Susan and Dr. Fitzgerald. "I'm terribly sorry, but I need to leave. My granddaughter needs me." "Of course," Dr. Fitzgerald said, pulling a business card from his pocket. "Please contact me if you'd like to discuss Elmwood further. The university would be very interested in exploring possibilities." I thanked him, tucked the card into my purse, and made my hasty goodbyes. 20 minutes later, I found Emma sitting in the school counselor's office, her small face blotchy from crying, her hands twisting a tissue into shreds on her lap. "Grandma!" she cried, bolting from her chair and throwing herself into my arms. "I'm here, sweetheart," I soothed, holding her tight. "What happened?" The counselor, a gentle-voiced woman named Ms. Rivera, gestured for us to sit. "Emma, would you like to tell your grandmother what upset you? Or would you prefer I explain?" Emma buried her face against my shoulder. "You tell," she mumbled. "During recess, a classmate told Emma that her father was in jail because he's a bad man," Ms. Rivera explained carefully. The child had apparently overheard parents discussing the situation. "We've spoken with the other child and their parents about appropriate conversations and the harm that gossip can cause." My heart sank. We'd been careful about what we told Emma regarding Nathan's arrest and the subsequent legal proceedings. She knew her father had made a mistake and that he needed to talk to some judges about it, but we'd shielded her from the specifics and the public nature of the situation. "Is my daddy really a bad man, Grandma?" Emma asked, her voice small and uncertain. I chose my words with great care. "Your daddy made some poor choices, Emma. That doesn't make him a bad person. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes." "But is he in jail?" she pressed, her eyes searching mine for truth. "He was for a little while," I acknowledged, seeing no benefit in lying when the information was already circulating. "But he's not anymore. He's staying with your other grandparents now." "Why can't he come home?" The simplicity of her question belied its complexity. "That's something your mom and dad are figuring out," I said gently. "Sometimes grown-ups need time apart to work through their problems." Emma seemed to consider this. "Like when I fight with Lily and we take a friendship break?" "Something like that," I agreed, relieved at her ability to find a reference point that made sense to her. "It doesn't mean they don't care about you. They're just trying to sort out some complicated grown-up issues." After completing the necessary paperwork to take Emma home early, I texted Olivia to let her know what had happened. She responded immediately. "Already spoke to Ms. Rivera. Taking the rest of the day off. Meet you at home in 20. The drive. Home was quiet, Emma lost in thought in the back seat. I resisted the urge to fill the silence with reassurances that might ring hollow. Sometimes children needed space to process difficult information in their own way, just as adults did. When we arrived at the condo, Emma headed straight for the small collection of toys we kept for her visits, selecting a puzzle and setting it up on the coffee table with single-minded focus. I recognized the behavior from my years in education, the seeking of order and control through structured activity when emotional chaos threatened to overwhelm. Olivia arrived breathless and worried, having rushed from the community center as soon as she could get away. "How is she?" she asked in a hushed tone as we watched Emma methodically sorting puzzle pieces by color. "Processing," I replied. She has questions that we need to answer honestly, but at a level she can understand. Olivia nodded, slipping off her work blazer and joining Emma on the floor. Hey, sweetie. That looks like a challenging puzzle. It's the solar system, Emma replied without looking up. I'm doing all the blue pieces first. They're probably Neptune and Earth. Smart strategy. Olivia began helping, letting the simple activity serve as a bridge to more difficult conversation. Mom told me you had a tough day at school. Emma's hands stilled momentarily. Tyler said Daddy's a criminal. Olivia took a deep breath. Your dad broke a rule that grown-ups have to follow. That's why he had to talk to judges and police officers. But he's working on making better choices now. Is that why we're living with Grandma instead of at our house? Emma asked, fitting two pieces together with a satisfying click. Partly, Olivia admitted. The house actually belongs to Grandma, not to us. We were allowed to live there, but after what happened, it seemed better for us to stay here for a while. Emma looked up, her expression surprisingly pragmatic. I like it better here anyway. Our old house was too big. I always got lost trying to find the bathroom at night. A startled laugh escaped me, drawing curious looks from both Olivia and Emma. I'm sorry, I said, composing myself. It's just, sometimes you have such a practical way of looking at things, Emma. It reminds me of your grandfather. Did he get lost looking for bathrooms too? Emma asked seriously. No, but he always said houses should fit the people who live in them, not the other way around, I explained, remembering James's resistance when I'd first suggested purchasing Elmwood. He'd eventually agreed because of the property's historical significance and investment potential, but he'd never fully warmed to its grandeur. Emma nodded, as if this made perfect sense. Our old house was too fancy. I wasn't allowed to hang my drawings on the refrigerator because Daddy said it would disrupt the kitchen aesthetic. She mimicked Nathan's pompous tone with surprising accuracy. Olivia and I exchanged glances, both struck by this revelation. It was such a small thing. Refrigerator. Artwork. But it spoke volumes about the atmosphere Nathan had created in their home. A house where a child's creativity was subordinated to appearances, where authenticity took a back seat to impression management. Well, this refrigerator has plenty of space for drawings, I declared, moving to the kitchen and clearing a few magnets. In fact, I think it looks rather bare at the moment. Perhaps an artist could help remedy that situation? Emma's face brightened. I could make some pictures after we finish the puzzle. I'd like that very much, I told her. The crisis averted for the moment. We settled into an afternoon of quiet togetherness, completing the puzzle, creating refrigerator artwork, and preparing dinner as a family. Emma seemed to have weathered the emotional storm, though I suspected there would be more questions and challenges ahead as she continued to navigate this confusing time. After Emma was tucked into bed with 3 stories and extra hugs, Olivia joined me on the small balcony overlooking the community garden. The evening air held the first hint of autumn crispness, a welcome relief after weeks of oppressive summer heat. I ran into Nathan today, she said abruptly, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. At the courthouse, after my meeting with the divorce attorney. I kept my expression neutral, though my pulse quickened. Was that difficult? She considered the question, less than I expected, actually. He looked diminished somehow, like all the bluster has gone out of him. What did he want? To negotiate terms directly, without lawyers, she said with a humorless laugh. He claims he can't afford the legal fees anymore now that his parents have cut him off. And you said? That all communication needs to go through our attorneys, she replied firmly. I'm not falling for his manipulation tactics again. Pride surged through me at her resolve. That was exactly right. He tried to make me feel guilty, said I was being vindictive by keeping Emma from him. She shook her head. As if I haven't offered supervised visitation multiple times, which he's declined because it's humiliating. His pride matters more to him than seeing his daughter, I observed. That tells you everything you need to know about his priorities. Olivia nodded, staring out at the darkening garden. I used to admire that about him, you know. His pride, his refusal to compromise. I mistook arrogance for strength, stubbornness for conviction. She turned to me, her expression open and vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen in years. How did I get it so wrong, Mom? I reached for her hand. We all make mistakes in judgment, especially when it comes to love. Nathan is very skilled at presenting the version of himself that people want to see. But I lived with him for 8 years. I should have seen through it. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But he didn't start out this way. People change, sometimes, gradually enough that we don't notice until the transformation is complete. She squeezed my hand, tears glistening in her eyes. I'm so sorry for how I treated you, for believing his narrative about you being controlling, about how you were interfering in our marriage. I should have seen that you were just trying to protect me, to protect Emma. You see it now, I said gently. That's what matters. We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching as lights flickered on in neighboring windows, each representing families with their own complex dynamics, their own struggles and joys. I met someone interesting at the Historical Society reception today, I said eventually. The new director of the university's Architectural Heritage Program. He expressed interest in Elmwood as a potential headquarters and teaching facility. Olivia looked surprised. You're really considering selling? I think it's time, I replied. The maintenance costs alone are substantial, and to properly restore what Nathan damaged would require significant investment. The university would have both the resources and the motivation to do it right. What about the money from the sale? She asked hesitantly. I know it's your house, your decision entirely, but I've been thinking about that too, I interrupted, gently. I'd like to establish a proper educational trust for Emma, one with ironclad protections, and I'd like to help you become truly independent, perhaps with a down payment on a modest house of your own when you're ready. She shook her head. Mom, you've already done so much. The condo, helping with our living expenses while I get established at work. This isn't about obligation, Olivia, I assured her. It's about family taking care of family. You'd do the same for Emma someday, wouldn't you? Of course, she said without hesitation. Then let me do this for you. Not because I feel I have to, but because I want to. She nodded, blinking back tears. Thank you. For everything. The next morning brought an unexpected development. I was preparing breakfast when my phone rang. Richard Tanner calling unusually early. Maggie, I've just received notice that Nathan's attorney has withdrawn from his case, Richard informed me without preamble. Apparently, there's been a significant issue with non-payment of legal fees. Olivia mentioned that Nathan's parents have cut him off financially, I said, lowering my voice to avoid being overheard by Emma, who was watching cartoons in the living room. That explains it, Richard replied. The court has given him 30 days to secure new representation. In the meantime, the DA's office has reached out with a potential plea deal. What are they offering? Misdemeanor unlawful restraint instead of felony false imprisonment. 18 months probation, court mandated, anger management and therapy, and 50 hours of community service. I considered this. No jail time? No. Given that this is his first offense and there was no physical harm, they'd rather not push for incarceration, especially with the current overcrowding in the county facility. The news brought a complex mixture of emotions. Part of me felt Nathan deserved harsher consequences for his actions. But another part, perhaps the educator who had seen countless troubled individuals benefit from appropriate intervention rather than punishment, recognized that jail time might only harden his resentment without addressing the underlying issues. I'm inclined to accept the plea deal, I said after a moment of reflection. But I want the restraining order to remain in place, at least regarding Elmwood Estate and me personally. That can be arranged, Richard assured me. What about Olivia's divorce proceedings? This development could impact those negotiations as well. I'll leave that entirely to her, I decided. Her relationship with Nathan is separate from my legal concerns, and she needs to chart her own course. After ending the call with Richard, I found Olivia in the guest bathroom, helping Emma brush her teeth before school. I waited until they had finished their morning routine, and Emma was gathering her backpack before pulling Olivia aside to share the news about Nathan's attorney and the plea deal. "What are you going to do?" she asked, concern evident in her expression. "Accept it," I told her. "Continuing legal battles won't help anyone at this point, least of all Emma. But this may affect your divorce proceedings. Without an attorney, Nathan might become more desperate or unpredictable." Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "My attorney warned me this might happen. We're prepared to file for a default judgment if Nathan fails to respond appropriately to court deadlines." Her calm competence impressed me once again. The frightened, uncertain woman who had appeared at my door that first night after Nathan's arrest had been replaced by someone more resolved, more self-possessed. Someone who reminded me of the daughter I'd raised before Nathan's influence had taken hold. "You've come so far in such a short time," I observed. "I hope you realize how remarkable that is." A faint blush colored her cheeks. "I've had good support and motivation." She glanced toward Emma, who was now impatiently waiting by the front door, eager to prove to her classmates and teachers that yesterday's upset was behind her. "Ready for school, Mom? Grandma? We're going to start our solar system projects today, and I want to get there early so I can be Saturn. It has the best rings." We dropped Emma at school, both of us staying a few extra minutes to speak with her teacher about providing additional emotional support if needed. Ms. Peterson assured us that she would keep a close eye on both Emma and the classmate who had made the upsetting comments, ensuring there would be no further incidents. "Children are often more resilient than we give them credit for," she told us, echoing my own thoughts from the previous day. "Emma has a strong support system in both of you, which makes all the difference." As we walked back to the car, Olivia checked her watch. "I don't need to be at work for another hour. Would you have time for coffee? There's something I'd like to discuss with you." We found a quiet corner table at the Morning Brew, the cafe having become our unofficial meeting place for important conversations. After our drinks arrived, herbal tea for me, a latte for Olivia, she pulled a folder from her bag and placed it on the table. "I've been researching 2-bedroom houses and condos in good school districts," she began, opening the folder to reveal printouts of property listings. "With my current salary and the child support Nathan will be required to pay once the divorce is finalized, I should be able to qualify for a modest mortgage. Not right away, but perhaps in 6 months to a year." I studied the listings, impressed by her thoroughness. "These are all excellent options. You've done your research." "The thing is," she continued hesitantly, "I'm not sure if I'm ready to live completely on my own with Emma yet. Financially, yes, eventually. But emotionally..." She trailed off, seemingly uncertain how to express herself. "You don't have to rush," I assured her. "You're welcome to stay with me as long as you need." "That's just it," she said, meeting my eyes directly. "I was wondering if you might consider a different arrangement. What if we looked for a place together? Something with enough space for all 3 of us, but also sufficient privacy? Maybe a duplex or a house with an in-law suite." The suggestion caught me by surprise. "You want us to continue living together, permanently?" "Not forever," she clarified quickly. "But for the next few years while Emma is still young and I'm establishing myself professionally. We could pool our resources, share childcare responsibilities, and provide stability for Emma during this transition." She hesitated again. "Unless you'd rather have your independence back, I would completely understand." I considered her proposal. My initial instinct after the crisis had been to help Olivia and Emma get back on their feet, then return to my solitary lifestyle. But these past weeks of shared meals, bedtime stories, and even navigating difficulties together had awakened something I hadn't realized I'd been missing: the warmth and purpose that came from being an integral part of their daily lives. "I think it's an excellent idea," I said finally. "With one condition: we find a place with a garden. Emma has developed quite an interest in growing things, and I'd hate to see that enthusiasm wither for lack of soil." Olivia's face lit up with relief and joy. "Agreed. And maybe a study or office space for your historical society work? And a proper kitchen," I added, warming to the idea. Not one of those minimalist showpieces Nathan was so fond of, but a functional space where we can actually cook together. "With plenty of refrigerator space for artwork," Olivia laughed, referencing Emma's discovery from the previous day as we continued discussing possibilities. My phone chimed with an email notification from Dr. Fitzgerald. The subject line read, "University interested in Elmwood Estate. Proposal enclosed." "Good news?" Olivia asked, noticing my expression. "Potentially," I replied, skimming the email quickly. "The university is definitely interested in Elmwood. They're proposing a fair market value purchase, with additional considerations including naming the restored library after James and establishing an architectural preservation scholarship in our family name." "That sounds perfect," Olivia said, sincerely. Dad would have loved knowing his passion for preservation would continue through students learning in that space. I nodded, unexpectedly moved by the thought. "It feels right, doesn't it? Letting go of Elmwood this way?" "It does," she agreed. "It's not really an ending. More like a transformation, as you said yesterday." The parallel to my own words about the estate sale struck me. Perhaps that was the true lesson in all of this, that endings were simply transformations in disguise, opportunities for growth and renewal if we were brave enough to embrace them. As we finished our coffee and prepared to part ways for the day, Olivia to her job at the community center, and I to a meeting with Richard about the plea deal, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear, nor would it be without challenges. Nathan's legal issues would continue to ripple through our lives for some time. Emma would have more questions, more moments of confusion and grief as she adjusted to her new reality. Olivia would face obstacles in rebuilding her career and independence. But for perhaps the first time since that fateful day when I'd found myself locked in the guest room of my own home, I felt certain that we were moving in the right direction. Not back toward what had been, but forward toward something new and authentically ours. The deed to Elmwood Estate had granted me legal ownership of a grand old house with a rich history. But the true deed, the one that mattered most, was the commitment we were making to each other now. To build a future based on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine love. And unlike the mansion with its imposing facade and hidden flaws, this foundation would be solid enough to support whatever we chose to build upon it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.